You want to spend less money, maybe in order to save more. In this video, I will talk you through 8 different categories of expenses where you can try to cut. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but this will involve budgeting. I know once I said you don't need budgeting to start saving, but if we want to spend less, we need to know where our money is going. So I highly recommend budgeting, even if it's just 3 to 6 months, where you document everything that comes in and that goes out. You can do it in an Excel sheet. I linked the Excel sheet that I'm using for this down below in the video description. So if you want, you can use that. If this one is too complex or complicated for you, you can also just Google it and try to find a simpler one. You can also use one of those apps. There's a lot of apps that do a very proper job on this. If you insist, you can also just do it on paper or in a notebook. This wouldn't be my first choice because you can't use the automated calculations. All right, let's dive in. I like to divide costs in fixed costs and variable costs. Fixed costs are costs that recur every month with the same amount. And this is housing, so this will be your rent or your mortgage if you own the place. For most of us, this will be the highest position in our expenses. And some people say that when you want to spend less, you should start with the highest positions. And you might consider it if none of the other stuff works. But actually, first moving is quite expensive, both in time and in money. And if it means for you to move to another area, this can be a huge sacrifice. So I definitely recommend to start with the easier things. If you still want to save some money there, you can consider moving into a smaller apartment, or you can also consider renting out a spare room. This can either be a person, to live with you, or if you don't want that, which I could absolutely understand, you can also rent a room or garage or any kind of space that you have as storage space. So people pay you for being able to leave their stuff there. Next up is contracts you need. This will be your cell phone, insurances, all these contracts around housing like electricity and Wi-Fi. For those kind of contracts, it can really be beneficial to compare different companies and different providers. To find the best service, you can use websites or apps. Sometimes they even do it for you. And then there will be contracts you want, or maybe wanted in the past. And this will be all kinds of memberships and subscriptions. And I promise you, when you start budgeting, you will find some subscription or membership that you haven't used in ages, but you're still paying for it. Those you quit immediately. And then there will be memberships or subscriptions that you might use occasionally. And then you can ask yourself, is there a cheaper version of this? Or do I really need this? For example, I had a gym membership once, and it was a really nice place with a pool. When it was still between where I lived and where I needed to go every day, I was there very often because it was very convenient. But then when I moved to a different part of the city, the friction to go there was just too high and I didn't use it anymore, so I quit it. Instead, I do my workout at home now. Other kinds of subscriptions can be apps or websites or magazines or some kind of services. And then also ask yourself, do you really need this? Can you maybe share it with someone else so that you only have to pay half? Just try and find ways to optimize. And the last position in the fixed cost department is debt. So if you are in debt, this is the only position that I don't recommend to cut off, because you should try to pay off the debt as soon as possible. But we won't dive deeper into that here. I'll eventually make a video about paying off debt. By the way, if this is helpful for you so far, I would love it if you could drop a like for the algorithm. The second part is variable costs. So variable costs are costs that you also kind of need to do, but they differ every month. We'll start with food. And even though food is a necessity for us, but still I think, depending on your spending habits, you might be able to save a lot in this category. For example, by not eating out too much, because going to a restaurant most of the times is a lot more expensive than eating in at home. But of course that also might depend on where you live and which kind of restaurants you go to. Another tip is don't go to the supermarket when you're hungry, because you'll eventually buy more than you need. And you might also consider to maybe make a food plan where you plan out the week what you want to eat and then buy it, or maybe even order online if it doesn't cost too much extra, and then you're not tempted to buy more than you need. And another thing, also depending on the country you live in, but sometimes supermarkets have these cards, and I don't recommend using them, especially of course not if it's a credit card. You don't want to go into debt for food, but sometimes it's just these cards that gather your information about when you're buying and how much you're buying, and then in exchange they offer you some discounts. And this might sound tempting, but in the end you will buy more than you need, and therefore also spend more than you would have needed to. Next up, clothes. So the best thing here obviously is, especially if you already have a huge wardrobe, to not spend at all, at least until you fit your first big financial goal. You can even look out for projects that just keep it simple. For example, project 333 or 333 or something. You know, where they recommend just having a very essential wardrobe and then switching it up. And you'll probably be surprised by how little you need and still look good every day. If you still need some clothing, of course, you can try to buy it on sale or even secondhand. And I think the most important thing here is try to shield yourself from consuming. For example, what I did, I unfollowed fashion influencers because seeing all those nice things scrolling through Instagram, it just makes you want to have them. Also, what I recommend is putting all your shopping apps on the last side of your phone and to unsubscribe from all their email newsletters because it's just temptation after temptation in your inbox. Next category is a car. Now you should know, a car is a luxury item. It depends on where you live, because if you live in some parts of the US, there's really no going around a car. In these cases, don't buy them new, because a car loses a lot of value if it just has a few miles on it. So maybe look for those who are at least a couple of months or a year old, or maybe even older. If there are alternatives, you might consider that. For example, public transportation. If you live in a big city, chances are the public transportation is quite good. And then even if you use a taxi or an Uber or a Lime, it still might be cheaper after all than owning a car. Car sharing could also be an option because a car has a lot of expenses. There is tax, there is insurance, there is maintenance, there is gas, and there's the buying price, and all of that can add up to a huge amount of money. So maybe take your time, run some numbers, and then decide if you really need a car. And last one is activities. These are all the things like eating out, drinking out, going out with friends, to the cinema, to the opera, to a club or whatever. And I put this one last, and I think it's a tough one because spending time with friends and family really is important. And those are the kinds of experiences that you maybe will remember quite a while, where you can make memories and also bond with different people. So I recommend to check out all the other options that we discussed before you cut on this one. However, if you notice in your budget that it's like this huge amount of money that you spend for all these kind of things every week or every month, then you maybe should ask yourself, is there a cheaper version of this? For example, do I need to go out into a restaurant for a family dinner, or can I also do it at home? Are there cheaper restaurants than the ones we've chose before? So if there's really no other way, you might consider, reducing it from like 4 times a month to 2 times a month, but then can make it worthwhile even more. If you haven't started saving yet, I'll recommend this video next, where I'll go through the process of starting to save. Subscribe to the channel if you like, and I hopefully see you in the next video. Bye bye.